Lisa.
Hi.
How exciting.
2 seconds ago, you said you weren't going to announce it.
I know. Well, that's how I roll. Congrats. Very exciting times.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Lisa, being working in real estate, helping people buy houses, you probably are working with a lot of people who are engaged or getting married or having kids in these life stages. Now you get to maybe empathize with them going, wow, you have these big changes. It really does promote home ownership in a lot of ways.
It is a little bit different looking at it from this perspective. And I love what Joe and Carolyn talked about because they have the side of making people break up with their houses, and I get to have people fall in love with houses. So it's much more fun for me. But it is too. There's people who are moving up, and so they have to think about, they still have to break up with their previous house. But we get to do the exciting part of what changes are there going to be.
So then let's talk about, when you go into a house and the changes are there, what stages does somebody go through? I mean, is it love at first sight? Is it date it for a little while? I mean, how do most people, I guess, as you say, fall in love with a house?
Completely depends on the person. I've had some people walk in and they're like, this is the house, we're going to put an offer in, and we've only been in there for 5 minutes, and they love their house still 6 months later, a year later. And then I have other people that spend an hour with the flashlight looking in crawl spaces. And I have one guy, he's awesome, and I should tell him to listen to the show because I laugh every time I get an email from him. He's an engineer. And he has like his top 5 non-negotiables, and he rates every house. But he sent me the other day this pie chart that had like lines and all these things over it, and every house was ranked. And he's like, I didn't realize what was important to me or not. And I'm like, you did this? Like how much time did you spend? Most people are like, check, 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 and check. And he had 0.6 rating on one for something. I don't know. It's crazy.
That's an engineer.
That's an engineer for you.
Engineers for
but
you.
he's very analytical about his house and not emotional.
So that's, a whole lot. He doesn't really fall in love. He's more of the, this one's going to work the best.
Yeah, it's completely non-emotional for him.
Interesting.
But then there's other people who the decision is purely based on their gut and what their feeling is when they walk in the house. Now,
when you talk about the gut and the feeling, I think that really ties into what Joe and Caroline were saying, because really you have, if the stuff, if the pictures, if the marine flag, if all these different different things, 49ers gear, is on the flag on the wall, nobody's gonna want it.
No, if anybody has cowboy stuff in their house, it's an absolute no. I just tell people, let's go. Might be a little biased.
That's okay.
It really is like, I love the advice of depersonalizing. And I have seen houses that have nude pictures in them, and you can't see the house. You walk into a room and that picture is there, and you can't see the house anymore. And even people are just very different. When there's a ton of family pictures on the wall, it's hard to envision your stuff being there. And the houses that we like looking at best are the ones that have been painted a neutral color. Just very, very simple, because they can put their stuff in there right away. If not, they have to mentally take the other person's stuff out, put theirs in, and it's just a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's because now you're not just adding, you're subtracting and adding.
Yeah, and it's a tough decision for people anyway, and then to have to go through that process. It's always great, though, because the sellers that had a ton of stuff that did it, because you open the garage, and I'm like, they cannot park a car in here, because there are boxes of stuff that they took out.
Do you tend to think, as people, when people go into a house as a buyer, I know if I go into a friend's house or somebody's house, of course I'm looking at the pictures. It draws your eye. When you say you're not really looking at the house, they're really not looking at the house. They're focusing on pictures, and they're focusing on artwork and things that are really, they're meant to draw attention. That's why people typically buy them or put up pictures, because there's a good photo. Or a naked one, apparently.
It's crazy to see those. I was amazed. It's amazing, because then I get embarrassed really easily anyway, and then I'm like, oh, geez, I can't be in here. But it is, you really do get drawn to those types of things, because that is what the house is about. And then all you do is end up spending your time envisioning what their lifestyle is like and who these people are. And so you don't see the house.
What about, and is it different for, like, say, a first-time home buyer than maybe somebody who has been in a home before?
Very much so, and not necessarily what is personalized in the house or what isn't, but it's just first-time home buyers are going in and they're envisioning their entire future. They're probably moving out of an apartment or they're getting married. They're maybe still living with their parents depending on age. So they're envisioning their entire future, and there's so many things they need to think about. How long do they think they're going to live there realistically? Because everybody buys a house saying this is going to be my 30-year house. I'm going to raise my children here and my grandkids. And it's usually not the story. Which is so different than
a few years ago, which this is my 3 to 5 year house before I moved to the bigger house and the bigger house.
But most of the first-time home buyers we work with, and we work with a lot, they want everything on their list checked. And so we work with them through, okay, are you really going to be here for 30 years? Because if not, let's sacrifice a couple things now that aren't going to be important for another 10 to 15 years to you. Mm-hmm. So there's those things. When you're talking about a move-up buyer, they're looking at something different because realistically, they are probably looking for their last house before they retire, depending on their situation, of course, as well. But they have to think about what they liked and what they didn't like about their house. It's important for them to analyze why they're moving. You know, what's important to them at this stage in their life that they feel like they need to move. What do they feel like they compromised on the first time that they don't want to this time? Mm-hmm. And then you have, of course, the people who are downsizing. And that's a completely different ballgame because they have an emotional attachment to their house. You know, they have memories and they know they're moving on to, you know, what may be their final house before whatever happens.
before the retirement home.
Before they're retired. There we go. Wow.
So PC, Lisa.
I really was going to say retirement home, but then I don't know if that's PC either. Nothing is anymore. You have to be very careful.
You did say naked picture earlier, so.
Only because somebody else said it first.
Got it.
It's okay if someone else says it first. Then you know it's okay. But they have their emotional attachment to their house that they have to let go of. They have to really be ready to move on to that next house. And oftentimes they have to think more about stairs.
Yeah.
Our stairs, okay. Where does the main bathroom have to be? It becomes more a functionality of the house as opposed to an emotional decision.
Lisa Hampton joins us, lead buyer specialist with Home Helper Consultants. Lisa, so you talk about, you got to break up with a house and you got to fall in love. Is there like a rebound period where all of a sudden you're like, we left the house and now first one, person's like, oh, I got to be here.
Yes. And in those stages too, we really talk to them about, are you picking the first house just to pick the first house? Because my same friend who has all of his charts, I think he's at the point where he's also feeling like, okay, I really need to just buy a house. This one's fine. So we've been working with him through, okay, what compromises are you making to buy this, and is that really okay? So there is a rebound period, and there's also an excitement period for some people, where I'm the type of person too, where it's like I make a decision and I want to do it, and I want to do it right now. And sometimes you don't make good. Heather's that way too. Sometimes you don't make good decisions that way.
Yeah.
Because you want something to happen so quickly.
Well, and if you want the house to last, there's a maintenance period, and you could probably do all sorts of relationship type of anecdotes.
Oh, you could, and then there's always going to be
facelift period, remodel period.
Is a facelift part of a relationship?
No, never mind. Obviously not.
Not mine, I hope.
Judging by everybody in here laughing at me, it is no longer part of a relationship.
Very different from
a remodel.
2 to 5 years ago in your life.
With that, Lisa, thanks for stick around for a few minutes. We'll continue this conversation with everybody in the studio after this break.